She's the founder and managing director of Spa Connectors Global. She judges some of the most prestigious awards in the industry, and she produces the Spa and Wellness Convention internationally. Today, I'm in conversation with the great Kathryn Moore. Hello, Kathryn Moore, and thank you for joining me today. How wonderful to see you.
Thank you, Nergish. Thank
Good
you so
stuff.
much for having me.
Well, Kathryn, let's get straight into the conversation. Tell us at least 3 things that you're most proud of in your career.
Well, I'd have to say the first and my most proudest achievement would be having my own business.
Of course.
It definitely has its daily challenges, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I have zero regrets about leaving paid employment, even though obviously right now it would be lovely. Yeah, no, I would say that's probably my biggest achievement and I'm most proud of. But closely behind that would be my time spent at Minor.
Wonderful.
Working for Minor was an amazing experience. I honestly learned so much. The opportunities that I was given were incredible.
Yeah.
The tools that they gave me to do my job, I wouldn't have received anywhere else.
So can I just ask this question, because I love the fact that you've got an audience of spa owners, salon owners, barbershop owners from around the world, which is my audience. So can we be a little specific? Give us 2 resources that you actually learned at M-Spa. It was M-Spa within
M-Spa.
the hotels. So give us 2 examples of things that you would have picked up going into a larger group that you would not have had before you entered.
So probably finance would have been the most important education tool that they gave us.
Sure.
I had a team of finance guys that really drilled us on a day-to-day basis of how the spas were performing. But even back when I first started with Minor, I was looking after 2 properties. We were responsible for the P&L of the spas.
Correct.
And it was a standalone business that we had to make perform. Yeah. So from the minute that we walked in, and it's not just spa, it's whether it's an F&B or the hotel alone, everyone was responsible for driving their business.
Super.
So you walk in there and you're taught to do the budgets, you're taught to do the forecasts. You know, you're responsible for the inventory, you're responsible for the productivity of your team. Obviously it's a little bit different in Asia than say the UK or Australia or what have you, but it's your responsibility. And I remember starting in Hua Hin, and I really had no idea how to do a forecast.
Correct.
And I would sat down with my finance director at the time, and she would help me go through it and say, you know, this is what we need to do and this is how we would do it. And, you know, slowly as I worked my way up within the business, I got more and more savvy about what I was doing, but that came with practice and being put in that position.
Absolutely. But the reason why I asked this, Kathryn, is my experience is very similar. I'm suspecting that a lot of people of our backgrounds going into managing in groups and larger businesses don't come equipped with that training. And I remember being taught how to read a staff productivity sheet for 160 staff in my first job at Harrods. And I had no idea how to read a payroll costing sheet. And I remember having my friends in restaurants that are, of course, that have the background, writing on restaurant napkins and training me how to do it. But you know, it can be learned, and I think it's so encouraging that you are speaking about this, because there are people out there wondering if they should take the step. And there is learning in everything that we do. You know, sometimes we go in and that's probably the best learning. So give us one more example of what else you would have learned.
If I can just also touch on like what I see now and where I feel really upset, I think is the best word, is that the people that are running our spas, whether it's standalone or a hotel or what have you, they aren't being taught how to do these things.
Nope.
And we're expecting that they know how to do it, and it's not fair on them. And then we're wondering, why are these spas not performing?
Correct.
And it's then no wonder that they're not doing what we want to do. I think the second thing that I learned is it's about business, but it's looking at each property as a business case. So whilst we would have a great concept that might be able to be rolled out globally, it really doesn't matter if you haven't done your business case for that particular property or that particular region or what have you. You don't necessarily know whether it's going to work or not. And I don't feel like we, as an industry, put enough emphasis on a business plan or really working out whether a concept is going to work in a particular place before we do it. And that goes with, in terms of what we're putting into the build or the capex or whatever. We don't do an ROI that makes sense. We do it because our gut says that it's, this concept's going to work in this region because of, X, Y, and Z. So for me, I got so much freedom to create amazing concepts. I mean, I created a wellness program, which is still going, Balanced Wellness by Anantara. I created that and implemented it across all of the properties.
Yes.
And that was super cool, but I had to justify every single cent that was put into it just to even get a website made for it. I had to beg and plead, to show how was I going to get that money back in every single property.
What is the answer to that? For example, the Anantara group basically would have given you the go-ahead to roll it out everywhere. Are you saying that it was successful in some places but not in others? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's actually only successful now, and that's what I've been going 5 years.
Wow.
So it takes time, and I also said that at the time. If you're a hotel group and you're going to bring in wellness, and you're not known for wellness, then it's not going to be an overnight success story.
Like anything.
You've got to put the time, the marketing. You've got to show your customer that you know what you're doing.
Correct.
To gain that credibility, right? So while some properties worked quickly and we saw some turnaround, some took longer than others. But also wellness has become more mainstream now anyway.
Yes.
So it does make it easier to infiltrate in new properties.
Got it.
And it's sort of become the norm also now for hotels to have some form of wellness offering.
Got it.
But yeah, my point to that story though is it's about the fact that you need a business case and you need to be able to look at it and say, okay, well, best case scenario is that it's going to make this sort of money. And if it is, then here's your ROI. If it doesn't, well, this is what we're going to do. This is phase 2, or this is what we need to do to get it to actually work or what have you, and have a plan. And that doesn't just apply to a group, right? That applies to a standalone business.
Absolutely. So are you actually saying that is not always the case? Because I couldn't imagine going in without a plan B on a business and having the backup of marketing and having the budgets to do it over a period of time.
I rarely see these things happening. I mean, it depends on the group. It depends on the group. Like, if you're looking at some of the big groups that, still have a spa division and still have a really good team that works on spa development prior to opening, puts in the time and energy, and then has someone driving it that knows what they're doing, then you'll create something great. But more and more the big groups are having less people. And then also from a standalone perspective, which I think we've got to really look at, because there's more and more standalone options out there, whether it's spas or day spas or salons or med spas or whatever hybrid versions are coming out there. People are either in the industry and working their way up and deciding, I'm going to open my own thing. They don't then have the training to be able to run a business. Or they're coming in from outside the industry with perhaps
don't understand the industry as well.
Don't understand the industry, but perhaps they've got a business background, but they don't quite understand how to then I guess, execute or infiltrate a market with a particular concept. So, I mean, it just requires work and thought.
Education. It
And
requires
yeah,
education at every
yeah,
level. It requires
mm,
education, and I think that's what's so easy to spot when you walk in. And you know, my very first interaction with you was based on this topic, and it was such a short interaction, but I think that left me with a lasting opinion of you, because I just thought, oh my God, I've been saying this for a number of years, and this lady, it was just the way you laughed at what I had said that left such a mark on me. I have to tell you, Kathryn, I was so impressed at the fact that you got it in one, that, you know, very
I was
few people
probably up on my high horse about something. but
basically.
but
But
it,
you
you
are
know,
right. You are right in what you're saying. Basically, it can't be treated as an add-on. It has to
mm,
have. You know, our managers are not trained in what is essential to run a business. They're almost like caretakers rather than
mm,
managers.
yeah,
And then they're
yeah,
expecting that caretaker to do job
yeah,
of
yeah,
leadership, which is it's
yeah,
not possible. But anyway,
yeah.
so let's go on to
Um,
another one of your accomplishments, please.
so look, I think for me, it's hard to pinpoint another one, but I've always been the sort of person that's taken big steps and great big leaps when perhaps I wasn't really ready. Um, my parents would say that I give them a lot of stress. um,
In what
they're
way?
definitely they're definitely proud of me, but there's always something that I'm doing that they're kind of like, oh, my parents are very they're very inspirational people. Like they've done incredible things in their careers, but they're more conservative in the way that they do it. You know, they had the same jobs their whole lives, and they were very successful, but they're not entrepreneurs by any means. So when
Right.
they look at what I do, they kind of get a bit like, "What are you doing? Calm down a bit." So I I've always been like this, and I think one thing that sticks to mind, I was 19 and I was working in a restaurant in Perth.
Right.
I was running a restaurant whilst I was studying, and the owner said to me, "Would you go over to Melbourne, which is on the other side of Australia, and run our restaurant there?"
Right.
It was a 24-hour restaurant, seated like 250 people, had a takeaway section and all. I mean, I'd been trained to be able to do every section of
Aspect.
the
That's
restaurant, and
correct.
that's
Yeah.
what you had to do. But he said, "Can you go over and run it?" And I was kind of like, yeah, all right, why not? You know, and I was 19, and my parents, they still remember taking me to the airport. And Dad said to me the other day that he actually cried his eyes out when they got on the plane. And I actually ended up staying in Melbourne for like 8 years. I didn't. I stayed in that job for a couple of years. It was, I mean, the things I learned in that role also was quite
Invaluable.
insane.
Invaluable.
But you know, it's sort of, if someone gives me an opportunity, I very much just kind of say yes and then work out how to do it later.
But
And
very many
yeah,
successful people have done it that way. I can tell you that my first job that I got with a large team was because of a misunderstanding in my interview. I had said I had managed 13 people. My boss heard 30 people
oh, amazing.
and gave me a job managing 160 people. Thinking that I had said 30, so I had I mean, but
So
I
it's
just,
not a huge stretch,
it
30
is
to.
not a huge stretch. But he felt I'd managed people in multiple,
Oh,
but I made it work. That, I mean,
yeah,
that spirit comes
yeah,
from what have I got to lose? You know, when you don't
yeah,
have a lot to lose and a lot to gain, I
yeah,
think that works for people. Certainly works for me.
yeah, yeah.
But it clearly has worked and done wonders for you. How
Well,
wonderful.
yeah.
So,
So far, I'm
yeah,
getting
well,
there.
Kathryn, let's talk about one important lesson that you have perhaps learned,
I think,
just in business.
yeah. Look, for me,
Yes,
it's definitely about tenacity
yes,
and grit,
right,
and just having the ability to um, just get up when you've been knocked down, and just
Got
to keep going.
it.
And I don't know what it is, but I in so many instances, if I got told no, or no, you can't do that, or you're not ready for it, or whatever, I just kept trying. I just kept knocking on that door, and I just kept putting my hand up. And I think especially in the minor situation, there was many times where, I saw opportunities or roles that I wanted to do within the company, and there were a lot of times where they told me, no, you can't do it, or you're not ready, or whatever, which I didn't like to hear at the time. But I very much was like, well, okay, I've got to work out what I'm missing. What don't I have? And how do I get there? And how do I learn? And it was funny. I was just talking earlier. I remember one of my colleagues at Minor said that I was like Teflon. I would get something would get thrown at me, and it would just like either bounce off or slide off, and then I just keep going. And I think that's sort of always just been my way of operating.
Super.
I just keep going. Things happen, but it's not the end of the world. I've had some big setbacks within my business. Business partners go wrong. Losing staff that I wouldn't want to lose, business deals that have gone wrong, some very big ones where I've lost lots of money. But you just get back up and you keep going.
Fantastic.
So,
you know, Kathryn, these words will mean a lot to people given their circumstances right now, because there's going to be a lot of hardship going back into work, and there's going to be businesses that didn't have enough cash flow in their accounts that will be closing doors. But I have to say that when one door closes, there is definitely an opportunity around the corner. So
look, I'm a very much a firm believer of that. And I think one thing that I could say to people now is, if you are transparent and communicate with your team or your people or whomever it is, like, they will understand. Like, I don't want to let go of any of my team now. Like, I don't want to. I will do anything I absolutely can right now to hold on to all of them, because I feel like that's the right thing to do.
Correct.
But if I get to the point where, and they know that I've tried my absolute best, and altogether if I get to the point where I just know that we can't do it any longer, I'll have that conversation with them. And I feel like if there are people out there that are having a situation where they're really not going to make it or whatever, and they have to make the hard decision, then it's about being vulnerable and having that conversation. As hard as it is, it's better to be vulnerable and open and say, I can't do this anymore. I can't get us through. I'm so sorry. This is where we're at, and that's it.
How beautifully put. Thank you. I know it'll mean a lot to a lot of people. So here's going forward, I'd love to ask, when it comes to, am I right in believing that you've been involved in setting up a school as well?
So we do a lot with schools. I started our business with the idea that it was very much around training people and then placing them in jobs.
Right.
So when we did the placements, we would have had our hands on them. We would have trained them from a technical and from a soft skill perspective. And that, for me, that was really important. One of the business learnings that I had at very early on was losing one of the schools that I had in Bali that I'd put a lot of time and money into. And the model that we had worked on to start with was to start the schools, or take over existing schools and manage them, and then grow them. And they would be schools that had SIBTAC or Sodesco or whatever, and then we would add in our courses and just keep growing people through that and then placing them. And what we do now is we do a license program. So it's very much about going to existing schools
and
license our training to them.
Got it.
Yeah, so they manage it. They just deliver our training, and then when they have graduates, the graduates come into our system, and then we place them.
Get them employed.
So it's adding a screening process in there that means that we can say, it's not just a warm body that we found off the street somewhere. It's someone who's actually been through some form of a screening process. I mean, we obviously we interview them and we have reference checks, and there's so many different things that we do, trade tests, etc. But being able to add the actual training and the qualification part to it, it really helps for peace of mind for the clients that we place with.
Superb. And so you've actually turned the situation around in the sense that when that school didn't work or whatever went wrong, you found another way around it. See, that just explains your personality once
Yeah.
more. How
Well,
wonderful.
yeah. Well, apart from the fact I lost a lot of money, and
Uh, you know
and
what?
it was I spent a week in bed, I think, just not knowing what to do next. But you know, we learnt so much from it. We really took away a lot of learnings, and actually really it wasn't a sensible business opportunity for us anyway.
Got it.
It took up too much of our time and resources to manage them, and actually it brought us to a better place.
Yes.
So I've got to always think it's, you know, it's that, you know, one door closes, another door opens, as you say. We got to a much better place. So I'm grateful for that, for sure.
I think it just proves that old proverb, older and wiser.
Yes.
Basically, the learnings over the
100%.
years. Yeah, well, yeah. Listen, I have two teenagers and a 20-year-old in my house. The amount of times I have to say, you know, been there, done it. Trust me, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
They have to try it themselves, don't they?
Yeah, of course you do. I mean, I have to. So, right. So, I guess the next natural question, and I think I had one there, and you've sort of hinted towards it and answered quite a few things. But is there a message out there to, I guess, spas of all kinds, as we've said, whether they are standalone, whether they're within hotels, and of course, you know, destination spas is a little bit of a difference depending on their geography, etc. But is there a particular message to send out? This message to do with giving people the resources to do their jobs? Is there that's clearly something that you feel passionately about? Is there something that one has to that a particular message that you want out there?
Look, I just, whether you're a spa manager or director that's been in the job a long time or has just been promoted, or even if you're a GM that oversees a spa or an asset manager or what have you, it's about looking at that spa as a standalone business that actually can make money and viewing it as a business opportunity and having a strategy for it. I
Yes.
mean, you can't apply a blanket strategy to a spa just because one spa in another city in your hotel group is doing the same thing, right? You've got to actually put some numbers and facts and data to that actual property, and it's not done enough, and we don't do enough with data that we collect from existing properties.
Right.
So we've got to be smarter about how we use technology, because you know what we're doing now is we create millions of point of sale systems, but what are we actually doing with all of the technology and data and everything that we could be collecting to then actually take that data and then create spas or salons or clinics or whatever it is that people actually want. You know, it frustrates me so much that half the time we just assume that we know what a customer wants. But when's the last time someone ever asked you what you wanted in a spa, or whether you had a good treatment or whatever? Like most of the receptionists that I come across, and I travel a fair bit, I used to go to spas and so forth. People, they don't ask me, they don't inquire. We don't actually know what people want. So how are we professing to create these concepts or to create these new facilities and spend all this money on all of these crazy experiences or machines or whatever? How do we actually know that this is what people want?
Kathryn,
we kind of tell them.
Yes.
I guess we tell them at some point, and we do have that ability to create the trends and to tell them that they want this, and you know that's obviously a possibility. But I do think we need to be looking at our businesses in a much more I guess, strategic or critical way, and then looking at what do we have to do, and then spend the money that's needed. Spend the money that's needed on the business to make it work. And if that's spending money on training, or spending money on infrastructure or capex or whatever it is, that's what needs to happen.
So
otherwise, they're not going to work.
I agree completely, to the point where when I'm actually training out there, whether it's professionals, beauty therapists at their level, or the manager, it's that I keep saying the information is in your hands. You see it every week. It is telling you a story, for God's sake. It's not just numbers to put away at the end of the week. Look at it, it's telling you a story. And it's that, I mean, I could talk about
but they're not taught that.
They're not taught
how to read it. Yeah, I remember at Minor, and sorry to go on about it, but we would have to present every month in the XCOM meeting when I was in property level. We'd have to present the scenario of what was going on based on the numbers.
Yes.
So it was like, okay, well, our external capture is X.
Yeah.
And we'd have to explain why. Or in-house capture was X, and we'd have to explain why. And we'd have to actually understand why the business was going in a certain way. Why was the average spend like this?
Sure.
Because we did X, Y, and Z, whatever it was.
Correct.
But we couldn't just sit there and be like, the average spend is X, the capture rate is Y. We couldn't just sit there and read the numbers out. We had to actually give reasons why a business was performing a certain way. And if we would see that numbers had dropped versus budget or versus last year, we would have to have a damn good reason.
But also a plan as to what you were going to do about it. Right.
And then, how are we going to fix this next month? Correct. Or what are we doing? What initiatives are we doing now to be able to rectify that? Because it's not going to fly by the end of the year if our numbers come in behind budget, because then that quarterly review where the GM would have to present the whole numbers of that property to the XCOM, we'd all be in big trouble. So it's understanding the numbers as much as recording them. And that's sadly not there.
Wow. Yes, preaching to the converted, I got to tell you, that's exactly my thoughts.
You and I should just join forces and go and preach to people.
I don't know if
do this.
I don't know that we'd be allowed in the same room at the same time.
Totally. I know, they'd be like, what the hell is happening?
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and you'll get to see every conversation with every expert.